the Constitution recognizes that you can create a fund under PFM for counties. I just said a neater way. What you're saying is the ideal way would have been to have like a county administration fund, county emergency fund act, county bursary fund act, and then regulations. But on the face of it, from these provisions, it's not an illegality. The fourth one, on this fund, Chairman, people were credited with money when they didn't know the money had been credited because they had waited for so long. Unfortunately, I think at the time the audits were being done, the bursaries, but otherwise.
Yes, okay. We sorry. Thank you, Chair. My name is Jonathan Kimongo.
This evidences has been attached on the effort that has been put into place by the county.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Jets Kalunda. What they did, which is allowed, it's not exactly illegal. If you look at page 589 onwards in this document, that's where the concern is. The regulations require that members should be 7, but you can see at the point when the ward committees, and that is annexure 6A onwards, they appear to have been more than 7. So to sort out this issue, Chairman, on Appendix 6D, on page 744, I appointed a legal committee to review the legislation. We have the regulations already undergoing public participation in terms of composition, in terms of even the query on scholarship. We realized that the scholarship was not defined. The query on scholarship, query 8, scholarship was not defined under this regulation. So when we came to office, Mr. Chairman, we have, and members, we have defined the composition properly. We have defined scholarship properly, and we have also introduced in these guidelines, and we can even demonstrate that we have uploaded even the names on the website. We upload the names on the website so that names are accessible in advance. So the question as to whether there was public participation is now addressed by ensuring that before bursaries are issued, the names are put in a public place so that then members can have an input. And in this particular financial year, Mr. Chairman, we received complaints, which complaints were addressed as a result of making sure the public can get in advance, because it is it's a very dicey line. I can tell you, when I was given a list of bursaries and scholarship, one reads very needy, the other one reads extremely needy, the other one reads extremely needy. So and then you have to pick one. It becomes a very difficult task for the executive to pick extremely needy, or very needy, or needy, or orphan, unless the public have an input in it. And I have seen some good progress by ensuring that we have this public. But in my own estimation, number 1 to 4 are all needy. But then we pick the most vulnerable. I must also confess that, of course, by making sure that this matter is public, we have then found those people who wanted to bend the rules, and we have found them. And action has been taken. Thank you. On the question of the accounts, payables, this one.
No, I just wanted you to answer on that particular one.
Which one?
The composition and appointment of the board.
Yes,
the committee. Yeah.
Yes, that we have addressed.
Yes.
By ensuring then the legislation is very clear
Okay.
on the word public participation.
Okay, the clerk is advising that we have an issue there on the regulations that you have attached there, because they are made pursuant to the PFM Act 2012.
Yes, Chairman, at the beginning I mentioned this issue,
Yes.
that the ideal situation would be to have an act, then regulations.
Yeah.
Now, proper legal advice means in the absence of an act, you fall back to county, to national legislation.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, we have, of course, used the PFM, and then, of course, the solution is eventually have an act like the CRF Fund, County Administration Fund, which is an act, the Emergency Fund, which is an act, but this particular one doesn't have an act. But on the face of it, prima facie, it's not an illegality, it's just not properly organized.
Yeah. So maybe the clerk, you can tell us what issue are you having with the regulations?
I think, Chair, our legal can comment, because under 116, CCMs don't have powers to make regulations under the PFM. But she can read for us and then make comments.
Okay. Legal?
Chair, that is the position. Section 116 gives the power to establish the county public funds, and the power is given to the CC to publish with the approval of the county assembly. So the mode of establishment now is legislation of the county. The risk of establishing regulations under PFM is national legislation, meaning that the Statutory Instruments Act applies to that particular regulation. So to that extent, those regulations would ideally have to be tabled before Parliament rather than the County Assembly. That's why it's better to have the regulations done under county legislation, so that once the regulations are done, then it is tabled before the County Assembly. Thank you, Chair.
No, Governor is a lawyer. I can see he's going through the Constitution. We have faced the same problem with other counties as well, where they have done regulation pursuant to the PFM Act, and we have given direction. Senator Kina.
Maybe the best way is to direct the governor, who is a very good, competent lawyer, to PFM Section 116. I think anything to do, and you're aware that the PFM, they are county government regulations, which is separate. And that is why our legal counsel is suggesting that we only focus on developing own regulations based on county legislation that is passed. Yeah, you know, it's only the cabinet secretary who, in charge of finance, who can develop PFM regulations.
Article 207. That's of course all of us are. I have been a legislator and you're legislators, but that's the confusion is caused by 207(4), and part of legal practice and I learn is to learn from everybody, including the good lawyer of this committee. The Constitution reads as follows: an Act of Parliament may make further provision for withdrawal of funds from a county revenue fund. B reads, provide for the establishment of other funds by counties and the management of those funds. That act, under that article of the Constitution, is a PFM. So the Constitution recognizes that you can create a fund under PFM for counties. I just said a neater way. What you're saying is the ideal way would have been to have like a county administration fund, county emergency fund act, County Bursary Fund Act, and then regulations. But on the face of it, from these provisions, it's not an illegality.
Let me just maybe assist the governor here. The problem is the limitation set by the PFM Act. So unless we amend the PFM Act to comply with the Constitution, right now we are limited. Yeah, because if you read the PFM Act, it talks about who has got the powers to establish regulations, which is the cabinet secretary. Yeah, that's the problem. And there's always that disconnect between the Constitution and acts of parliaments. One other big problem you're going to face is with the new FIF fund. The new FIF fund sets up the CC in charge of health as the head of that fund. You know, and you know very well that it's only the CC in charge of finance who is sort of like, who has got the extra powers. So you'll find that conflict between your CC finance and your CC health, because CC health would want to have the autonomy of controlling that fund. In fact, I'm bringing in an amendment to be able to correct that, because the problem was that we were being rushed to pass that piece of legislation. So we have to comply with the law and what it says.
Can I read so that we are clear? 116 of the PFM reads as follows. A county executive member for finance may establish other public funds with the approval of the county executive committee and the county assembly. Under 9 of all the things that are under that fund is the regulations may provide. Remember, it reads county executive at the beginning and it continues. So the same county executive may make regulations for the provision, establishment, management, operation, or winding up of county public funds under this section. So there is a conflict, I agree, Senator Ledama, but it's reading, so the golden rule of interpretation is you interpret all legislation in the simplest term unless it causes an absurdity. So that is the absurdity that is not an illegality.
Chair, with your kind permission,
Yes,
I want to.
You are also a lawyer.
Yes, at the same time, Professor Kivutha Kibwana was campaigning, so he may want the checks to all clear at a certain time so that he may get funds. And by the way, I beat him thoroughly.
Senator Kisang, the last comment and then we.
Chair, you know, I don't know if the senator from Magweni and also the governor have gone through the list, Appendix 1D. You know, if you look at this thing, Governor, very clearly, go to page 149. You'll be surprised. You know, if you're keen, on the 4th January, they issued a check number 142 at 7,300. And then 128. And then the same month, 28, you issue a check number 7. Immediately after that, check 195. And you know, these I thought they're supposed to be serially following each other. And then if you go to the same page, there is a school. Maybe the senator can tell me on yourself. You have a school in Magweni called I Can Fly High. So, and you know, yeah, just check. Yeah, it's there. So, and also this writing of too many checks, individual checks, Governor, I don't think it's a neat way of managing the resources. You know, the best way is if you do RTGS or you find a neater way of sending the checks to the institution so that, you know, you also cut cost. Otherwise, if you look at this thing very critically, it's like cooked. And this was January 4th. And normally within 6 months, checks become stale. Yeah. So, you know, there is a lot of, unless this was a part of campaign resources for some party leader.
Maybe your governor, you make your final comments before I give directions.
Chairman and members, I appreciate the comments. Fortunately, this is in the past. Unfortunately, we have set up a system that we will not have these problems going forward about the presentation of checks. In fact, what we did this financial year, Mr. Chairman, was to issue the checks openly. We set up public forums. I attended one of them where the checks are issued, read in public, issued openly. Then you will not have this problem where people come to offices to collect checks and then you draw this list. You end up with this sort of problems that you are mentioning, so that we can check the institutions. The second one is, of course, to issue the checks to institutions as opposed to individuals. And the third one, of course, is to ensure that as opposed to checks, although we have a way of only believing checks. The better method would be to wire the money into the various accounts of the schools. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, very well. I think we need to make progress. The auditor, you will need to verify all the counterfeits. So the county finance, you will provide the counterfeits to the auditors to verify, and then the auditors, you advise this committee in 21 days on your finding on that matter.
Chair, as we are giving direction on that, if you don't mind, I'm not altering your directions. I'm just maybe adding more flavor to it. There's an issue that I raised on the dates that these checks were issued. You know, because Governor has said something which is important. He has said that, you know, he came in and he made some changes. But I'm alive to the fact that there's Article 226, subsection 5, where if an holder of a public office misappropriate funds, they are liable whether in office or out of office. So can we then now, with your directions, Mr. Chairman, have them provide us the dates of which the checks were issued so that we know whether they fall under 2 financial years? And this is because the governor was saying these checks were being issued even the day before the elections. And my colleagues here said maybe this was a funny way of making sure that they keep some money. You know, they kept those checks, maybe someone kept those checks, you know, and then issued them when they wanted to issue. Because it's just, you know, it beats logic. How does a needy student go seek for support, and then the parents keep the check in the house and then submit it at the end of the elections or at the end of, you know, it just doesn't make sense. So, Mr. Chairman, if you can add that, I'll appreciate it.
Okay, so I think the auditors you have noted, you will need to also include the dates in your report, and also advise the committee on issues the senator is raising. So within 21 days. 21 days.
I just want to qualify that at the time when the management letter was issued, I was campaigning. I was not in office, so that was June. And by the time Damaris gets into office is November of 2022. And you can see this was running continuously. Senator Ledama, if you look at the state bank statement, January to December, you see how it was running continuously. These checks were being presented continuously. Even the day before election, it continued. Because although the calendar year ended on 30th, they continued doing these presentations. And again, I say because of the way the school calendar was going. That is the only explanation I can give. That, and to answer the question by the member about money being lost, we have checked. No money was lost. Checks were presented. The information could not have possibly, there's so many entries, possibly the counterfoils were not shown to the editors in its entirety. The list is there, the acknowledgements are there, but if you look at the statements running up to December, this would have been really a truckload. We sampled them to demonstrate, 1, the counterfoils are available. We have demonstrated. 2, the list is available. And 3, the schools where this money was going is also shown. 3, lastly, the checks are issued in this format. If there are certain, if it's Bonigas, for example, issue 1 check for 10 students. And therefore, then, as the students report, then the schools then present the checks. So there's obviously a problem which we need to address with the auditor in terms of what they require from us in relation to the end of the financial year. But schools are running on a different calendar from the financial year, and I think that is something that I have picked that can be addressed. And thank you for the compliment of diligence.